I'm gonna get some cool thing going on here. Yeah, dog. Whenever you're ready.
All right. 3, 2, 1, rolling.
Hit it! That's what I'm talking about. Wait!
Okay, now, from the beginning.
Hit it, boy.
My guest for this episode is Ascanio Pignatelli, whom you may recognize as one of the hosts on Travel Channel's Shark Chasers. With extensive experience in shark diving, cave diving, and rock climbing in some of the world's most extreme environments, Ascanio is the definition of the modern adventurer. Now, as a leadership coach and CEO of Ep.3 Solutions, he's on a mission to empower and inspire leaders to be maximally engaged in all aspects of their life. Some of Ascanio's feats include selling Shark Chasers, a TV series that he created, hosted, and produced, to the Travel Channel, successfully lead wreck diving expeditions all over the Red Sea, dive the famous Blue Hole at night without lights, hand feed 12-foot lemon sharks, penetrate a school of hammerheads, and wrangle a 14-foot great white shark. Also, ice climb El Pamayo, one of the most sought-after alpine climbs in the world. Ascanio says, everything starts with energy and mindset. By reshaping your core beliefs, judgments, and assessments about your own abilities, you will have a new perspective of your full potential. Actions are motivated by feelings, and feelings stem from our core beliefs. Unless limiting beliefs are discarded, behavior won't change. To work with Ascanio, check out his website, www.e3.solutions. All right, Ascanio, thank you for having me in your camper. It's been a while.
Villa Pignatelli.
Are you dragging this thing around all throughout the country or just here in the Southwest?
No, I mean I've been some friends and I have been all over. It's been as far north as Montana, as far east as Kentucky. So I go wherever the climbing is good and when the weather beckons, I'm on the road. But I spend most of my time between here and Utah.
A lot of great climbing in Utah.
There's a lot of great everything in Utah. So I'm part Utah boy. So I have a lot of fun out there and try to get out there as much as possible.
What are your favorite climbing places up in Utah?
I think
Well, I guess we got to preface this by saying a lot of the places you get to, most people can't, because you do some pretty extreme climbing and adventuring. So
I like to hang upside down in caves and be like a spider, like a little bat, just hanging out. And and I spend my summers a lot in a place called Maple Canyon. It's a conglomerate rock. It's a sedimentary rock that's basically been we're cobbles, so these quartzite cobbles, and they've kind of gelled together in this matrixy sandstone. So it makes for really interesting, very fun, featured, three-dimensional climbing where you can get super crazy steep, and it's a lot of fun.
And how long does it take for you to get out there? Do you stay in the town or do you just camp right by the closest entrance?
This little guy here makes it pretty much almost everywhere that I need to be, so I can make it up into the campground. I usually stay right on the outskirts of the campground so I can hike a little extra, and so I don't have to deal with moving the rig around too much.
So do you actually camp out there in the desert, or do you just stay in the camper and hike out to...
Both. Pretty much both, yeah. Wherever, it depends on where I'm at. I mean, sometimes, I can get my rig, like today, right at the beach. We're on the beach. We're at the beautiful Playa Vista beach. But, when sometimes this is a big sprinter van, so it's a little harder to get this, if there's a lot of off-roading and stuff, then I try not to beat it up too much because it gets a little crazy in here. It moves around. I've had some interesting experiences.
Yeah, I was not expecting to see this camper. I was thinking more of a 1970s Winnebago or an Airstream, something like that. But this guy looks pretty luxurious.
I'm a bit of a bougie dirtbag.
Doesn't it stand out when you're out at the campgrounds and like, who's this guy with the white van?
With a big nice white dirt bag? I mean, I guess people sometimes wonder, but it's nice to be completely free. It's one of my top values is freedom, and so this really is the ultimate freedom machine. It allows me to do whatever I want to do, be wherever I want to be, and minimal sacrifices. I don't stress about finances, monthly rent, mortgage. This it's like, no, man, this is, I got everything I need here, and my life is on the road and just going to cool places, beautiful, and not being tied down to any one spot. And if I want to go somewhere, I can go. And I've always got my life, everything I own. Well, not everything, but I mean, I've got storage, but all the important stuff I have is right here. So, and I could be in 11 hours, I could be in, or actually like 15 hours, I could be all the way in Colorado.
Right.
Climbing, it's, 10 hours, it's 8 hours to Utah, or it's actually 6.5 hours from here. But so it's pretty cool. It's pretty convenient.
I guess a couple years ago, this wasn't as big of a lifestyle, but at least from what I've seen, the mobile lifestyle has kind of blown up since with the mobile phones and everybody's doing online businesses. People
Yeah.
can kind of live wherever. Have you seen that out on the road, or have you met people that you didn't think you would meet before that are living this kind of lifestyle?
Yeah, I mean, definitely there's more people. I've been doing this for about now 3.5 years. So I got this motorhome at the beginning of 2015. So right at February 5th, 2015, I think is when I adopted this little girl, and we've been pretty much full time since. And like I said, initially it took it. There's a bit of a, not culture shock, but it's like a logistical shock, if you want to call it that. And then just of getting used to it. But it was so seamless, and it was just so. Once I got it, it was like it was normal after almost immediately.
What was some of the bigger logistical shocks that you had to get used to?
Well, obviously moving something that's this big around initially was a little bit. It took a little bit of a readjustment because I went from an A3 Audi to this. So,
Yeah,
this is
tiny.
24 feet long. It's like 9 feet wide or something. I don't know how wide it is. It's about 10 feet, 12 feet tall, 11 feet tall, something like that. And so it took a little bit of understanding that, I can't basically fit into the tight spots I used to be able to fit into. So understanding how it moves and whatnot.
Yeah, we'll let that guy pass.
Yeah, we can reshoot that if you want.
No, it's fine. Oh, keep it real.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's it. Yeah, the logistics initially took a little bit of adjustment, but in life, it's one of the cool things. And I guess through all my coaching and just perspective shifting, is that no matter what, your body eventually, your environment acclimatizes. So your body and the environment will acclimatize, so that what doesn't feel normal eventually will feel normal.
I think a lot of people kind of underestimate their adapting ability, but
Exactly, yeah.
But when I think about people living out in the desert, I mean, like ancient people living out in the desert,
Mm-hmm.
or, on some island in the middle of a grand big Pacific Ocean, it's like, how did they get there?
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
didn't start out like that.
Exactly. I mean, people that sail around the world, and they have to have a completely different mindset. I mean, the mind shift for me was, I mean, it took a long time to really get all the details dialed, but for example, like my water consumption is almost nothing, because I have systems and techniques where I can do a lot of reusing of the water, recycling, so that I have clean water all the time. But at the same time, I don't flush with clean water. Like I use, I wash the dishes and then I use that water to flush the toilets, and then, so I keep it all minimal, so I don't have to, fill up every 2 days. So I can go quite a bit. I've hacked the water conservation game pretty good. So I'm excited by just minimizing my footprint, my carbon footprint, my environmental impact in the world. And trash is almost minimal. I have a tiny refrigerator. All my electrical comes from solar, so I do okay. Yeah.
Oh, really solar. I gotta check that out after we're done.
Yeah, no, I have solar panel here, so that charges. I've got a little battery up there. It tells me exactly how it's pulling. So I think it's at 13.8. So right now California's sun is just beating down. So it's, I could almost get hooked up to the grid and sell some extra solar because it does so well.
Yeah, if you need to, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, this kind of lifestyle, I think a lot of people are still shocked that people are doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there's a couple bloggers that I know that just live out of the Airstream. They came all the way out here from Ohio, and
Right.
there's just so much you can do, and the freedom. And I kind of feel like for you, your life has always been about, adventure and freedom. But is it different now that you're able to do it with the technology and the transportation available? Has this always been something you wanted to do, like living?
Yeah, I mean, I forgot that it had always been something I wanted to do. And a friend of mine reminded me once, and he said, you know, man, I remember when we were in our 20s and you said that, you know, you wanted to travel the world in a motorhome. And I said, really? I said that? I did that? He goes, yeah, man, you don't remember? And I was like, nah, man. I go, yeah, now I kind of do remember. But I was like, yeah, you know, I didn't even think about that. And he was like, it's so cool how you know, you had this dream and you did it, you know, and a lot of people, they talk about eventually doing something, but, you know, obviously that was important to you and you eventually did it. And I think for me, it's one of the cool things is that I want, you know, I want people to be inspired about just living their fullest with having, you know, just the basics. You don't need to have, you know, these huge McMansions and, you know, whatever, to be happy in life, to be fulfilled, you know, just like you don't, you know, that crap doesn't get you psyched in the morning. I mean, most people don't wake up and go, oh my God, I love my house. Like, this is so rad. This life is so good. They just get, you know, they eventually acclimatize to that situation that they have. And then they're like, okay, now I got to chase something else. Now I got to get a bigger house, or I got to get a new car, or I got to get the motorboat or yacht or whatever, you know, so I can feel like I'm progressing. But
That's interesting. I haven't thought about acclimatizing to the or having more stuff, and then you don't feel like you
yeah.
have stuff.
It's like a hit, a dopamine hit. You know, it's like these. We're always on our phones too, checking, because we get, like, every time we get a text or we get a like on our Instagram or whatever it is, or YouTube viewers or whatever it is, we're like, oh my God, okay, cool, that's awesome. I'm getting, you know, I'm progressing. I'm making it. It's happening.
Right.
But when that stops, eventually we acclimatize, and then we kind of like start getting depressed when we're not getting that constant feed. We're kind of like rats, conditioning ourselves to just this constant, you know, serotonin and dopamine hit.
When you're coaching various leaders and business people, have you seen this problem a lot, that, you know, they don't feel happy? Is that one of the problems you try to help them with?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think one of the big things is fulfillment. You know, well, with businesses, it's all about really getting engaged. You know, getting their employees engaged, creating a workplace culture where people are psyched to be at work, and you're not going to get that just by having hefty bonuses and big fat salaries. I mean, eventually people get bored of that. That's why you have all of these people that have all of the success and yet they're miserable.
Right.
Because they forget about they're not really connected to the you know, to their purpose. You know, they don't really have a purpose. They haven't really sat down and thought about it and gone, well, what is my purpose in life? What am I doing? What's the difference I'm making? What is the meaning of all of this? How am I playing, you know, a part to make this world a better place? And when you stop thinking that, you know, or you don't live according to your values, according to your mission and your vision, then eventually it's just, you know, it just sucks.
Right. We're here living in Los Angeles, and I mean, you spend most of your, I guess, your life here, and you know, we're surrounded by celebrities, business people, the most successful people in the world, and we still hear about, you know, well, I guess in the news too, there's a lot of people committing suicide.
Yeah.
People who have it all, essentially, like Kate
Yeah.
Spade and Anthony Bourdain.
Yeah.
They, I mean, Kate Spade committed suicide in her New York flat. Right, probably cost like millions and millions of dollars to live there, and she has everything she could ever want in success and things like that, and it, you know, everything money can buy, basically, what you're saying, and they don't feel the fulfillment that, you know, kind of living like the way you do might.
Yeah, I mean, it's tragic. It just blows my mind, and it actually kind of pisses me off too, because I think that, you know, it's such a bad example for people. I think that, you know, to take the easy way out like that, when you have so many people that, you know, especially as a celebrity, you know, because you have a following, and people look at that and then they're like, okay, you're leading by example, whether you want to or not. You know, you can't be a celebrity and be like, oh, I can do whatever I want, that's just me. No, it's like, you know, you have influence. You're influencing other people, so there's a certain amount of responsibility. You have to think about that and be like, okay, you know,
Right.
And so that it annoys me when when everybody's, you know, almost like celebrating these people who take that way out. And, you know, how many teens are going to be like, well, Anthony Bourdain did it, so I'm going to do it too, you know, and if it, you know, I want to be like him, or it's just not, it's just the repercussions and the ramifications and the difference you're making is such a negative one that it's when you do something like that, that it kind of bothers me a little bit.
Yeah, it might wipe out a lot of the good that they did before
Of course,
that part of their lives. Yeah, recently I was down in Long Beach listening to a professor named Jordan Peterson. I don't know if you know him. He does a lot. He's pretty big right now, but he's a professor of psychology. And yeah, one of the things he said when somebody asked when they were thinking about taking their own lives is like, don't be so sure that it's your life to take. And, the people around you, even if you don't think people around you care, it's going to, it's going to make a big difference. And it's something that you can't take back. So do everything that you possibly can. Because other things you can try, but if you try this, taking your own life, that's it. You don't have any other. The story ends right there. So he's just like just keep putting it off until some other time, and try everything else that you can along the way. But
it's it's a tragic cop out, and I think ultimately what it really boils down to is where your focus is. And I think a lot of people that take that way out are so egocentric, they're so focused on themselves that that's their world, that they can't see beyond that. And I think that, for example, like even with employees, right? You know, getting them engaged is like understanding, helping them see outside of themselves. Like this is the difference you're making in the world. Because the more we focus on ourselves, the smaller our lives are. And the more we can focus, the more selfless we become, and the more we focus on other people, then these thoughts don't even come into the equation. It's like one of the best ways to get rid of depression is stop freaking focusing on yourself and start focusing on other people. Start thinking, how can I help other people, instead of worrying about myself, how I'm feeling and what I'm doing, and just worrying about me all the time.
So how did you come to learn these things? Because I guess just like we're talking right now, it's not apparent to everybody, whether if it's employees or a celebrity. It's not obvious that some of these things you're talking about, that's kind of how you should live, and you'll find fulfillment and more happiness in it.
Yeah, I mean, just through a lot of through probably workshops, books, reading, and just life experience. I mean, I used to be way more egocentric, and I was depressed all the time because I was so self-centered. My world was focused on me. Like, what's Ascanio? Why is the world unfair to me? It was all me, right? It was, kind of like Trump, right? He's so freaking focused on himself that he's got no, understanding. He's never going to be happy. Because even all the success he has, he could be president of the United States. Inside, he knows he's still a piece of shit, and he's not thinking about everybody else. He doesn't have anybody else's interest at stake. He's just got his own agenda, and it's all about Trump. And until he, starts understanding, having some compassion and understanding that, life is about other people. It's about making a difference. It's about being there, making the world a better place, like a real better place, not just like, what can I do to maintain all this power and this, glory and all this, what he thinks is. But when you start living from a place of like contribution, how can I help others? Then you're no longer worried about yourself. It's like you've attached yourself to a much bigger cause. You know what I mean?
And was there a specific incident that kind of helped you get out of that depressive state, or was it more of a step by step? You felt like you need to do something different with your life, and you had to.
It's interesting, Jeffrey. There was I think when it was during one of the seminars that I was taking, and it was all about personal responsibility, and at some point you have to take ownership of your life. And I think a lot of people, and up until that time, I hadn't really taken ownership of my life. I blamed everybody and everything for where I was, for all the success that I didn't have, for all of my problems and all of that crap. And the moment I actually took responsibility and took ownership of my circumstances, and not only the physical circumstances, the external environment around me, when I took responsibility for that, and also the internal, of course, being like, wow, I'm actually in control of my emotions. I'm responsible for my feelings. I'm responsible for my thoughts, my beliefs. It all starts and ends here. Then at that point, I could literally feel just a shift in energy. Like I had access to so much more energy, so much more power, more freedom, more responsibility, everything. So that was the big impetus for me, is like really owning that, okay, it's nobody's fault, where I am. I'm responsible. So if I want to make a difference and my external world and my internal world, it starts and ends here.
I totally agree, and I think that's one of the big messages that our culture has kind of lost. I feel like in some of the ancient cultures, they're more present in, I guess, even training
Yeah.
young boys to have to go out and hunt when they're really young, or you have to kind of prove yourself. And
Right.
nowadays, it's more about, what can I get, or what do I deserve, and
Yeah.
and I guess it does come with our country guaranteeing freedom, but a lot of that is not. It's something we provide each other, but it's not the norm for most of human history. It's like you do have to do things for yourself, and if things don't go right, so it's up to you to do something different,
Mm-hmm.
even if it is somebody else's fault that something bad happened to you. You can't really change them. You can like try to convince them, but the only person you have full control of, and like you said, both internally and externally, your emotions and actions and how you treat people. You're the one responsible for switching something bad to good, or changing something from good to great.
Right, exactly. And at the end of the day, something can happen to you in the physical world, some event, and you can make it mean whatever you want. And that's where all the suffering comes from, because people attach so much meaning to stuff that really has no meaning outside of, what they're placing on it. So the meaning is created when they interpret as somebody accidentally hits my car, they leave. So I'm somebody, I'm a pushover, I'm a loser, whatever it was. I mean, people make up these stories all the time. I mean, you see people getting cut off on the freeway, then they cut each other off a couple times. There's some road rage. Guy then pulls out a gun, shoots the other guy, and it's like, wow, really? That your ego just got the better of you, just took you on this craziness, and now all of a sudden you've impacted the world in an incredibly negative way. For what? Because you made that guy cutting you off mean something, which it really didn't. Who knows? Who cares? It's got nothing to do with you. That guy's problem is that guy's problem. It's not yours. If you want to make it your problem, now you can, not that, but that's up to you, right?
Yeah.
So the choice is yours.
Yeah, I don't think people think about that until after they've done something. But yeah, you're right. Our brain creates so much noise, and it just fills our minds with random thoughts. I guess like dreaming. You're like, where does that stuff come from? You don't know, and you just start attaching different meanings, or you're self-projecting your disappointments, or your. I guess a lot of times it's also that you're not doing something you're supposed to, or that you could be doing, and there's some anger in that, and you project that onto the other people and take it out on other people. But these are just some things I've thought about and seen. But
You keep a dream journal?
huh?
Do you keep a dream journal?
No, actually, I haven't really dreamed in a long, long time. I might dream once or twice a year now.
Really?
And I don't know if it's the medications I'm on because they're more toxic, or just because I'm so worn out all the time that I just don't dream. But I do have a dream book, but haven't had a chance to use it because I don't really. So I know everybody does dream when they're sleeping, your REM sleep and things like that. I just don't wake up remembering anything happened, and that's, I guess, for the last eight or so years since I've been getting better. It's just gone. Like, I haven't really dreamed about anything.
So, I mean, I dream a lot, and I'm much more aware of my dreams now. But some nights, there was one night, I do keep a dream journal. I remember one night there was 5 dreams I had, and I remembered all of them. It was pretty intense.
Do you do lucid dreaming? Are you able to do
Not
that?
yet. No, I've been trying to really hard, and there's an exercise you can do to kind of create the state where you are able to lucid dream. And I was practicing it a little bit at a time. So, for example, what you do is you ask yourself, am I dreaming? Am I dreaming right now? So I'm asking, okay, am I dreaming? Am I dreaming? No, I'm not dreaming. But hopefully at some point I can start lucid dreaming and then really have fun.
Yeah, because I do believe that you are thinking something subconsciously when you are dreaming. It is still a part of your brain. You're not,
of course, yeah.
You're not going to, let's say somebody 100 years ago, they're not going to dream about what an iPhone is because they never seen one. So it is what you're dreaming is still part of your reality, and you're probably trying to figure out something else. So yeah, like the idea of lucid dreaming has always fascinated me because it might be like a different way to figure out your own problems or
Oh, completely.
yeah.
Like it's your subconscious mind just communicating with your conscious mind. That's
Yeah.
what I believe dreaming is. Your conscious mind just doesn't always understand how to access that or understand it. But there's a lot of interesting things about that.
Yeah, so I guess I want to switch tracks a little bit, make it a little bit more positive, and I want to talk about your upbringing. And you've lived all over the world since you were growing up. And you were just telling me yesterday you actually started out in Europe and Italy. You were born in the U.S.
Born in Rome, Italy. Yeah, in the Colosseum, in a gladiator fight.
But you sound totally American.
I'm not American. I'm Californian.
Yes, there's a difference.
I say I'm Cal-Italian.
Okay.
I'm no, I have a California heart. My roots are Italian though.
So if I put you in a room with a bunch of Italians, you'll sound totally different.
Well, the funny thing is that Italians I don't have an accent, so I'm accent free. So when I speak, it's with zero accent. So they're always interested in where are you from, like how is it that you don't have any accent, like where you but if I'm in Rome for a little bit, then I try to sound more Roman because first of all I love the Roman dialect.
Oh, okay.
And I love the sound of it, and it's those are my people. So
yeah, I can't really tell a difference, but I do remember when I went to Europe for a month for the whole fashion month.
Yeah.
I was starting from New York and then London, Milan, and Paris. Italy. Milan was my favorite just because of how warm the people are and just
they're great people.
Yeah.
And those are the coolest or the least warm of all the Italians.
No, what I actually enjoyed was hanging out with our cab driver and walking on the street. I think we had a cab driver that just because he saw, so I had to wear my breathing mask throughout everywhere in Europe because of the cigarettes and perfume and things like that. But the cab driver started asking me why I was wearing it, and just kind of told him about my health problem and how big of a deal it was that I was traveling. And he was like, "Oh, I'll just show you around town." So he gave us a full tour of the city for free.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Italians are great. I mean, they really are truly genuine. I made friends in Ibiza last year. Just met people like randomly at some of the big clubs and parties, and we were all hanging out and had fun. And it's so nice. Like I know that if I go back this year and see them all again, it's like we're gonna be best friends. So they're great people, and they when they click, they click. It's a different. I mean, the friendship. It's not something you have to really build and build and build. I mean, with certain Italians, it's like you meet them and you're best friends right then and there, and you don't have to have all this like courting and just this like, oh yeah, we need to get to know each other 10 years and go out dinners regularly. It's like, no man, you're just, it's on. So I feel like there's that deep connection that's much more present, possibly maybe not just Italy. I think with other cultures too, but I definitely feel it in Italy.
Yeah. Well, I feel it with you. So I guess just talking through it now, this is kind of what I remember because the first time we met, I was filming for you and I didn't really know you, but you made me feel totally comfortable and convinced me to climb up a hillside.
Right?
But, yeah, and for the longest time, like for the months and months before, like I couldn't even get out of bed. So it was a small step for I guess anybody who's climbed, but it was a life-changing moment for me that I could do that.
No, I'm so glad we got to experience that.
Yeah, so always appreciate and remember you for that thing you did. And but yeah, so how long were you growing up in Italy? How long did you stay there for?
Well, I was there until I was 4, and then we moved. I left Italy when I was 4, went to London for 3 years. Then I moved to my family, and we moved to New Jersey we were there for about 2.5 to 3 years as well. Then back to Italy, to Turin this time. My dad was with Fiat, so Fiat was headquartered in Turin, so that's where we were. Then I was in Switzerland for 3 years on my own, and then my brother came, so I got to spend a couple of years with him. And then I was in London again for 3 years before I finally settled in California.
And so you were going to school at that time, or you were just backpacking and looking?
No, that was all school. That was all from 0 to 19, and then I came out to the States.
So I have a question. How does moving around to so many different schools was that hard adjusting, or did that kind of teach you how to make friends and adapt to environments? Kind of like what we were talking about in the beginning. Like a lot of people, if they're just grew up in one small town or even here in California, but they've never moved, what's the difference compared to you?
I think it definitely made us more adaptable. I moved also to Egypt when I was a lot older, and I spent 6 months there, and to me it wasn't really that big of a deal. Like my mind was already like, I left California, I went to Egypt for 6 months, and most people were like, wow, what was that? And I was like, man, it was like moving to Utah or something.
Yeah.
It didn't really bother me too much. It wasn't that I didn't have to really even though everything was different, the weather, the climate, the food, the people, just everything was, the culture super different. So,
Yeah.
but again, we adapt, and I think that there's a huge advantage to having stability and growing up in the same place and knowing the same people. And so I'm so glad that I got to provide that for my daughter, because we didn't have that growing up. But at the same time, she probably won't be as adaptable as I am, but again, she can learn, and hopefully have the mindset that nothing doesn't have to be hard and weird and tricky at the beginning. You can just overcome that really quick by just putting a very carefree mindset, just not attaching, just going with the flow, and just being open to the possibility of having something completely different happen.
Yeah, I didn't move around as much as you did, but I definitely feel like I have that problem of not having that long-term connection with people, just because I moved several times in elementary school, and then right after junior high. So it was like, I had friends for like 3 years that I still knew. I guess that gives me a lot more friends from different circles, from different places. But they're still all hanging out in the same places in the valley, and they we just haven't seen each other for like 20 years. So it's kind of hard to reconnect in the same way as somebody you've spent your whole life with.
Yeah. No, I agree, and I am fortunate that I did meet some pretty cool people that I've kept in touch with. When I was in Switzerland for 3 years, I have a lot of friends from that time, and it was just a little tiny moment, but yet we're still very close. So, and what's cool is that we've gotten closer, much closer than you would have expected. You know what I mean? People that you would be like, oh well, I'll never see them again, but just because we happen to be now all living in LA, or a bunch of us, and every time we travel, we run into each other, so it's kind of nice.
Yeah, LA is good for that. It is international
Yeah.
cities. It's not.
Everybody's got to stop by at some point, at least once a year.
Yeah, that's true. But did you feel that's what about living in different parts in Europe? Was that different, or did you just feel like it was still mostly in the same country and you didn't have to adapt that much?
I think the hardest place to adapt to was Italy. When we went from the States back to Italy, it was pretty tough, because we went during the 80s, and that was at a time when the Red Brigades it was a terrorist organization, a communist terrorist organization that was trying to overthrow the government and, wreak political and financial havoc on the, in Italy.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people now remember that. What what got that started?
I guess it was kind of like the Italian equivalent of FARC, the rebels in Colombia that were trying to overthrow the communist rebels, trying to overthrow the government there. It's very similar, and it was just basically an organization that they had assassinated a lot of political figures, a lot of judges, a lot of everybody hears of the mafia, but the mafia, that was more of a thing between the mafiosi, or the Camorra, the local crimes organization. But this was more like a terrorist organization. It wasn't like a gang. It was, full on, heavily armed, and they were, bombs, and So I grew up, with a bodyguard and bulletproof cars, and had to have security all the time. Like, we weren't allowed out of the house. I mean, our front door was this thick. Like, it was that thick. I mean, to open it, I remember I was like,
what was that, like like
11 years old.
half a foot or a foot thick.
It was about
Half a-
no, it was more than 6 inches. It was like a foot thick, and so to open this door, you needed so much energy, so much force, so much pressure. And I remembered like as a kid, opening it and then just pushing it open. It was like you're moving a mountain. So I guess that's why I decided to get into strength lifting later in life, because I remember that door was pretty heavy. But it was just one of those things. We were told like don't go to the windows, don't stay out to the window. So it was this really like I went from New Jersey, like having a huge garden, yard, freedom. Like I'd walk down the street, go hang out with my neighbors, to all of a sudden like you can't stick your head out the window. That was a bit of a shock. That was kind of like a freedom just like gone, and I was like, man, this sucks.
That sounds like more of a prison instead of a house,
yeah.
even if it is a big house. I mean, there are people saying if you're living in a poor country but you're the richest person there, don't think that's a good thing, because
Yeah, totally.
like you said, you gotta have bodyguards. You can't go anywhere outside your big mansion, and it's
Absolutely
totally different
true.
than we can, like out here we can drive just down to the beach and enjoy it.
Yeah.
Like if you didn't own the beach, it would be hard for you to get there.
And that's the thing. That's why it's so important. A country should should do what it can to make everybody's lives better, because then all of a sudden everybody's life becomes better. As your neighbors' lives improve, so does yours. I mean, indirectly. I mean, there's this permutation, just this wave across. But I love that point. I mean, I know people in Indonesia that have these beautiful mansions and this palace. It's like inside the city with these gardens everywhere. But the moment you get out of there, you're driving down through trash, homeless people, beggars, potholes, and it's just like a war zone. It's like that's hell. That's horrible.
How did you get through that period? Did you just stay home the whole time, and were you able to have friends or like other friends from school just living the same situation? It was just like bodyguards and black cars to.
They didn't really have. No, it was just us. There were a couple other people that had. I think there were a couple other people that were working at Fiat. I mean, Fiat was like the target. It was the biggest company in Italy at the time. My dad was like, he was he was one of the guys that was a major target, prime target, and so we were a little bit more kind of like under scrutiny, but can't say anything ever happened. There was never any incident, any close calls, nothing like that where we had an incident with terrorists or so.
Did they ever do anything on the streets or in public places while you were there? And
oh yeah, there was. I mean, it got pretty. There was a time. I mean, I remember there was at one point it got pretty bad, and my dad had to get there'd be a tank outside our apartment waiting every morning just to make sure that that people didn't come by. So there was like tanks and guys with machine guns like on their roofs, and just so it was a little I remember looking at that going, okay, I thought it was cool. A 12-year-old kid, I thought it was pretty rad. But
what do you mean they were there to make sure people didn't come by? Like good people didn't come by or bad people?
No, just obviously the Red Brigades that they started getting a little. There was some action happening, and so that was but we were pretty secure. There was also a judge, pretty famous judge that lived across the street from us, who had also put away some mafia guys, I think, and maybe some Red Brigades too. So he was a pretty big target, both I think with the mafia and the Red Brigades. So there was always cops there too, and this was like right across the street from us. So like 20, 30 feet away. So we didn't have to worry too much. But I mean, you never know. I mean, if they want to take him out, they can always do that. It's not, security is not gonna. Eventually, there's always a way if you really want it that bad.
I'm just asking because whenever seeing, but there's so much about terrorism or wars, urban wars right now, and it's just hard to imagine living in the United States. I guess even anywhere. I mean, I've been to the ghettos here and stuff, but it sounds nothing like what you're describing. And I was just curious what experiences you had there and how that's different from here.
Yeah, I think when you're a kid and just not being able to have that freedom, to do things and to explore, because kids are they just want to explore, they want to have fun, they want to be out and doing things, and I remember it was just like felt like this constant weight of just not being able to do anything, so that kind of sucked. But other than that, there was
But you
obviously
weren't treated differently at school or anything like that?
people would always knock on the windows because they were bulletproof, so they wanted to feel what a bulletproof glass was, so they would always like knock on the windows, and they thought that was cool.
Yeah, what does it feel like? Does it feel the same?
Well, bulletproof glass, 3 pieces of glass like glued together
Yeah.
in the middle, and so the glass is about that thick, and the windows would only go down about that much. So if the window was this tall, the what do you call it, the frame, it would only drop down to there, and that's as far as it would go. It wouldn't go all the way down because it was just too much for it was too thick.
Interesting. So eventually you got out of there, and
yeah. So I mean, in '83, I went to live in Switzerland for a few years, and that was interesting.
And then when did you get here to California?
When I was 19, I came out and spent my
any particular reason, or just
school,
because
Pepperdine. Yeah, I had to go to.
Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to go to I went to university. When I first visited the campus in early '89, I looked at it and I was like, "Oh my God, this is paradise." I mean, I was coming from London, which was a total shithole back then. The weather sucked, and it was raining and gloomy, and I hated it. I freaking hated London so much back then.
Well, I don't think you can really compare London to Malibu. That's just not a kind comparison.
Yeah, I mean, so once the Pepperdine was like, yeah, we'll I got in there, then it was like I was like game over. I was just like, okay, I was gone. I was like, okay, man, forget about London.
So did you actually go to school, or did you just go surfing like a lot of other people? Because it's just like you can see the oceans from class, probably.
Absolutely, yeah, from the library. I mean, you could totally see the I mean, I mainly
that's a big distraction.
I made a lot of friends, and I had a lot of fun, and I didn't really study, and I graduated like with, I think my GPA was 2.00003 or something. It was like if I had gotten a C plus instead of a B minus, I probably wouldn't have been able to graduate or whatever. But
hey, just do as much as you need to do to get the results you want, and you got it.
I got out of there. Basically, I got out of there with a minimal amount of effort, and at the end of the day, it's so funny because those degrees mean nothing, because nobody hires you on the degree. It's especially nowadays. So I'm kind of always curious to see how things are going to change.
Right. I've been sharing that message a lot, and I don't think a lot of people like it. But once they get out of college for a year or two, most people see that even if your degree gets you into your first job, it's not going to last very long. So you're spending, I guess a lot of people are spending their whole educational lifespan from K to 12, and then 4 years of college and going into debt, just trying to get that first interview, where there are a lot of other ways you can do that, or and the first interviews might not even be a job that you want to do.
No, completely. And that's the funny thing is, like, we in life, we go and we're like, oh, as soon as I get this degree, I'll be in demand. People will want me. They'll want to hire me. And it's like, no, man, people want to hire people with skill sets, they want a result, and this is what I teach people, and, the coaches that I train out there, I'm trying to constantly get them brainwash them to be like, look, it's about a result. It's about an outcome. What is it? That's where the value is. That's the value zone. What is the result and the value you can deliver for a customer? And it needs to be measurable. It needs to be specific, and it needs to be timely. Because otherwise people are just like, oh, I need to hire a coach. I mean, actually, it's frustrating when you don't know. I had a client reach out or potential client prospect reach out to me, and they're like, we want life coaching. What do you charge? And I'm like, it was frustrating to me because I'm like, what is it? What is the outcome you want? What is you don't want life coaching. What is the result you want? What is you want your life to look like after, we have our conversation? What is it that you need? Help me understand. Like, otherwise, I don't know if I can really help you. Like, forget about the rates, so that's irrelevant.
There are an infinite number of dimensions you can compare your life on. You can judge it on happiness, family, whatever happiness means to people, and or
Yeah.
money, or status, or how many Golden Globes you won,
Yeah.
or because there are people who've won a lot that nobody knows about.
Exactly.
Like what's your measurement of success? And
Totally. And how will we measure it? Exactly. What's it going to look like? So after I've coached you guys for a month or 2 months or whatever. What will have changed in the world, in your world? And let's talk about that. And if we can't measure, we're just going to have a better relationship. Well, what does that even look like? So it's like I'm very specific about here's the value that I will deliver to you. And the more we can specify that value, make it measurable, timely, and specific, then the more people are attracted to what we can deliver. And I think that's why a lot of people, when they send out these resumes, it's like it puts me to sleep. I'm like, what does this even mean? Like, what, who cares? Oh, you did this. And they write, I used to do that too, write the ability to multitask. Which is a big joke. Like, what the freaking hell does that mean? Like, that you're not going to be, that you're, I don't know. So it drives me crazy when people aren't very specific with what is the value they can deliver.
Multitask, like you can drive and listen to music at the same time, or what are you talking about?
Yeah, exactly. And it's such a farce because people can't. We're not good at multitasking. You don't want people to multitask. It's the most unproductive way to work, to try to get things done.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. People get distracted so much, and you want to finish one thing before you move on to another, so you can
completely. Yeah. It's hard. Look, I have major ADHD. I get bored fast. I get, I get irritated if I get bored. It's like I'm moving. It's like I catch myself all the time, just like I'm on a computer or doing something, writing an email, and then all of a sudden I want to go check something, and it's like I'm just like, wow, look how distracted I am, and look how unproductive this is, especially if you're doing like what I call like hard work or intense work, brainy work,
right.
Smart work, right, where you need to use your brain power to you're in the creative process, and the moment you interrupt that creative process, your mind goes from that state into a completely different state. We have 5 different states,
which are
delta, theta, alpha, beta, and then gamma.
And what do you mean by state? How do you
just the frequency, the way the brain, the cycles, the brain cycles. So you go from really low states like the delta state 0 to 4, which is basically when you're sleeping, to like theta to alpha, then beta. And
are you talking about states as in like how conscious,
how
conscious and how engaged in reality you are? Is that, or is that a different?
Like if your brain is at a certain cycle and all of a sudden you go into a different state to do something completely. So for example, like when you meditate, you go into like like an alpha theta state, right? It's like right around 7 hertz, 7 cycles a second. That's your brain that's what the cycle is. If you all of a sudden take it out of that and have to do something completely, that puts you in a completely different brain state, for you to go back into that state, it's going to take a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of energy, and a lot of just maybe luck and frustration just to get back to that state.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever had a really complex thought and you're explaining it, and then all of a sudden you go out of that state and you're like, I don't have any idea what it is that I wanted to share again. It was brilliant. Like I had this amazing thing. It happened to me all the time, especially in philosophy class. You'd have a really intelligent question, and you would start explaining it, and you were in that state, and then by the time I was almost done with a question, like I was already out of that state and I could not even remember what the question was. And then the teacher sometimes would answer it for me, answer the rest of my question before he gave me the answer. And it was interesting.
Do you find people, like everybody's like this, or are there differences in like creative or personality? Because I feel like a lot of the creative people I meet are ADHD, or just like focusing on too many things at the same time, and like I guess I would put myself in that category. It's just I guess I'm more also technical, but I jump back and forth. I can't my degree is in engineering, but I can't do that all the time, whereas some people their brain is always in mathematical or engineering mode, but I got to go create and do something or write something down. Thoughts, sometimes it's a philosophical thought, or sometimes it's an idea for a film I want to make. And then once I get that out of my head, then I can go back and do the technical kind of thing.
For
And
sure, yeah.
so I'm always holding like 4 or 5 different things in my head, and I feel like if I don't do that, I actually have a harder time being productive. It's just like I'm working on 5 things at the same time, so it takes me longer to. I guess it takes me 5 times as long to finish, but when I'm finished, I would have done 5 things.
Everybody works in different ways. I know that for some people that's effective. Just like an environment, a desk. Some people like to have all their crap all over the place. Just like it helps. I'm one of those people. I like to have visuals. I like to see my books, on the shelf, and I like to be, if I'm working on a project, I'm very visual, so I want everything kind of like post-it notes everywhere, and then all this stuff just like goes into my brain, and my subconscious mind will sort it all out.
Right, I'm like that. My desk is a mess when I'm working on like
and then other people need a clean desk, and they need maybe one chalkboard or one whiteboard where they can write nice notes, and that works for them. Look, everybody has different ways of processing information, and I think the important thing is to find out what works for you, and then just
Does the distraction and things happen with you when you're out doing like rock climbing or diving? I mean, because those are pretty intensive, mentally focused kind of activities.
Yeah,
right?
no, they definitely help. I think, when I'm climbing and I'm in a good mood, it's all mood related too, I think. A lot of times I think inspiration and creativity come when you're in a good mood. I know Beethoven wrote some of his best music when he was like really in his depressed state, and for him it was his way of dealing with his just extreme depression, the pain that he was feeling and all the crap, the illnesses that he was suffering through, and all the anguish that he was going through. He took it and made something amazing out of it. It gave him power to create amazing music. And that's, a lot of people would have gone the other way. They would have done a lot of destructive things to, channel that destructive energy that was coming in, but he did something amazing with it.
I forgot which singer it was, but somebody in the audience was asking them, why do you always write like heartbreak songs or like painful songs? He's like, well, that's when I need to write them. It's cathartic and helps him get his thoughts straight. And he's like, if I'm feeling good, I'm out somewhere, I'm partying, I'm I'm surfing or something. I'm not gonna be sitting sulking in the room writing. And so that's definitely true.
No, I definitely relate to that. I can definitely see how that impacts different people in different ways, and how we deal with our emotions. And
so what did you do after college? Because I'm sure a lot of people listening to this would have similar experiences of not having or encountering a world that's changed. You're not exactly sure what they want to do. Like, how did you kind of get through, like, find your path?
Oh, yeah. I mean, my path was pretty simple. I, eventually just got so fed up with the corporate world. I was working as some broker's assistant at Oppenheimer, and it was all, and these guys were just so freaking money obsessed, man. They were like, it was like, I remember once I was meeting with one of the top VPs there, and I told him, and he asked me something, and we talked, and I mentioned that my dad had just bought some stock that day, and he goes, "What did your dad buy?" And I was like, "Oh, this stock." And he goes, "Oh, how much stock did he buy?" And I told him the night, and I swear to God, he was like looking at his thing as he was speaking to me on his calculator, just doing the math, and he goes, "Wow, that's pretty cool. Your dad bought that today?" And I was like, "Geez, yeah." And then the guy, and it was all, I mean, it was so blatant, so just like that was a worth, and it just turned me off so much. It was like the way, I was being trained to like call people up and then almost like not con them, but just really get them to do whatever it took to get their money into the into the account, and it just didn't resonate, man. It was just not. I found it disgusting. I was like, this is not my thing. I hate this. And I was like, what is it that I really wanted to do? And I got excited about. I had a talk with a friend of mine, one of my best friends, like Egyptian guy, and so he was like, man, let's just have a dive boat in the Red Sea. And I was like, dude, that sounds like amazing. So yeah, I'll go become a scuba instructor, and we'll take people diving, and I go, that's gonna be amazing. So that's what I did. we didn't do the dive boat because there was a terrorist attack in at the Queen Hatshepsut Palace in '97, and so that blew up the industry. So that was
Jeez.
done. But yeah, tourism evaporated, and so I ended up coming back to California. So
But you did the dive boat here,
no, I
or
just worked as a diver for a while, and
Uh-huh.
then I got into TV. I had a TV show on the Travel Channel for a little while because of the diving. I was so excited about sharks. I loved them so much, and so I wanted to do something about them and help the shark cause because they were so like Jaws was the worst thing ever for sharks, and it was so sad. And I think Peter Benchley eventually,
you mean the movie
yeah,
Jaws? Right?
Jaws. I mean, yeah, because people just have this horrible impression of sharks, and after that movie came out, everybody was just like, sharks, kill them all. Like there was they were like evil devil, and
Yeah, I think a
stupid.
whole generation of
Missing
people just it painted them as the worst animal ever.
I know, and it's like they're the most amazing animals ever. I mean, any person that's ever seen a shark underwater, it's like it's a spiritual experience. You understand that these animals are just beyond. That first of all, they're 300 million years old. Okay, 300 million human beings. If we go back to our ape ancestors, are 6 million max, right?
Yeah.
The hominids, earliest hominids, 6 million years old. The oldest Lucy. We're talking Lucy, right? And these guys are 300 million years, so 50 times that. Modern humans 200,000 years old. So Cro-Magnon, Homo sapien sapien, 200,000 years old.
So I think because of Jaws, a lot of us haven't been down there and seeing them up close the way you do. So what else about them were just fascinated you or just made you think they're
Well, they're like
majestic?
alien. They're like alien creatures. They are so sophisticated, so advanced. I mean, they've got sensory. They have lateral line senses where they can detect electromagnetic fields. They can detect body. A fish that's injured in the water, they can feel the vibration of the fish and understand how injured it is. They can.
Really?
Their noses are so strong. They can detect like a drop of blood in a size of a pool that's an Olympic-sized swimming pool. One drop of blood in an Olympic-sized swimming pool. They can. I mean, it's out of control what they can feel. So imagine like all of a sudden you can detect metal. Just you have a new sense where you can detect metal. Imagine you have a new sense of smell where you can detect like miles away. It's like sonar. All of a sudden somebody moves down there and you can feel them moving.
Well,
It's insane.
well, with my condition, I sort of can. I react to things like that are a mile or two more away, but similar like that. Yeah.
You're a shark.
Huh?
You're a shark, basically.
I should make friends with them, just kind of see what they can teach me. Maybe I can hone my skills and.
Dude, they are so perfect for their environment. When you watch them in their environment, you're just like, man, they are just so beautiful.
Well,
Their
they've been
shape,
evolving
everything.
for 300 million years.
Well,
Right?
Well, what's funny is that
they haven't
they've been
hatched-
around for 300 million years, but they haven't evolved that much in 300 million years because they were perfect. They were so perfect to their environment, and they've been perfect for hundreds of millions of years. So there's not much difference. We had the megalodon shark, right? That's Carcharodon megalodonus, whatever it's called, the Latin word for like the great white, the super white shark. They're like 60 feet long. It was like a whale shark, but with a jaw the size of this entire vehicle. Like it could actually eat probably my motorhome. But so that thing, was bigger. All that happened is that things got a lot smaller since then.
You mean the
Animals.
Yeah.
And dinosaurs are gone. There were huge animals, and so now we're downsizing.
Well, it seems like sharks are making a comeback. Like people are more interested in them now with a lot of the Travel Channel and Discovery Channel. Things
Yeah.
like why do you think that is?
Because of my show. No, I'm kidding. I wish.
Right.
It was a small, tiny part. But I think that general shift in consciousness was. I think the Crocodile Hunter. Steve Irwin had a lot to do with making people just kind of more interested in those kinds of animals. I think all the Discovery shows, Air Jaws, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
There's so many shows that have since been created that are shark friendly that I think people are starting to finally like. There's a new generation of people that aren't growing up with all that Jaws bullshit. So
just educational and learning
They're
and being
more, yeah,
interested.
we're more conscious as a species.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know, and I think,
definitely.
yeah, I mean, I'm meeting people nowadays, you know, that are just so much, you know, they're young and they're just, you know, so much more enlightened than I think my generation was, and especially the older generation too, like the baby boomers
Yeah.
and the, you know, people before. It's so amazing how, man, I just how their thinking is just so. That's why you have these brilliant people. The brilliant people 50 years ago are really just kind of almost becoming commonplace now,
Yeah.
you know.
What was your show about?
The
Was
shark
it
show,
was it just about sharks, or did you travel and do other things?
we traveled, we did some other things too, but that was the problem of the show. It wasn't really specific enough. It wasn't really, there was no cause, no purpose to the story. And that's why it was kind of like it didn't go anywhere, because although I love the director, he was a wonderful human being, and you know, knew how to shoot underwater, amazing cinematographer. He did all of Jacques Cousteau's
Hmm.
films, and he was in charge of it. But the times were changing. This was back in 2001, and you know, reality TV was just starting to happen, and what we didn't have was conflict, and we didn't have story. The most important thing of any is structure. Anything out there that does well is because of any good film is people might not like the film, or they might not get it, or it might not be pretty, or it might not have action, it might not have all this stuff. But if it has a good story, then people are hooked. And that's why the best cartoons, the best you know, animated films, the best are the ones that really have a good story. And
Yeah.
that's why some adults, that's why now DreamWorks and a lot of these companies are really Pixar. They're really focusing on, let's get a great story and then we can animate it, rather than just have really cool animated stuff, because eventually, because people don't buy it, you know, they don't get hooked on that.
Yeah, I mean, stories definitely talk to a deeper part of us and
Yeah.
make you remember it. Like a lot of times you go somewhere, you might not remember exactly what you saw, but you remember the experience, and the experience is the story. But yeah, I mean, with all my filmmaking, since learning that and kind of knowing what the story structure is and
Yeah.
when conflicts happen, you can time the actual conflicts and changes of um, yeah, I guess the structure of the story, you can time it down to the minute in any Hollywood movie if you're looking for it. You know, like halfway point, something could happen, and
For sure, yeah.
25% into the movie, some big conflict or some big shift or something will happen, and it's a perfect plan that's been around, I guess, for thousands of years, and it's just the way we understand the world.
It's the most rudimentary. That's how we started communicating.
Yeah.
You know, we would tell stories about, you know, this is where you need to go find the food.
Yeah.
You know, and people would remember it, because a story has a power to transform. It's a really, it's one of the most, it's the most powerful way to communicate.
I think going back
medium.
to the school thing, I think that's why going back to the school thing, I think that's why school sometimes is hard for people, because a lot of times you're just forced to memorize something
Yeah.
without a story,
Right.
without a context. I guess it's another way to say what the story is, and having
Absolutely.
a purpose. We're purpose-driven beings, and if you're just like, memorize this formula,
Yeah.
but like, what's the purpose? If
Yeah.
you show a kid, even put them in like like a lemonade stand or something, and show them like the purpose of like of math or marketing or
Totally.
and they'll figure it out.
Yeah. And that's the thing. But the difference between a great teacher and a poor teacher, I think, is well, obviously, the great teacher is passionate about the work, really cares about their students, and wants her students to succeed. But they also are able to really make it relatable, and make it purposeful, meaningful, and also use story to really help them, perceive it and own it.
Yeah. I had one more question about your TV show. I'm just
Yeah.
fascinated by you getting paid in a way to travel and
Right.
kind
I
of do
mean,
what you
best job ever. Like, still trying to figure out how I can do that again.
Hey, the internet's opening up. People can do a lot of things, whatever interest they want, and there's something behind that.
For sure.
But did you just take people on a journey? Is that what you're trying to do, like adventure underwater and getting up close, or what, if there was a purpose at all, like what would it have been?
I mean, I think my purpose for the show was really to connect. It was all about connection and really, getting almost like becoming a shark in a way. I mean, I remember I'd watched some of the clips, the intros and extras from the show, and it was always, I was obsessed with like, just getting as close as possible to them, touching them, hand feeding them, putting a hypnotizing them. I got to hypnotize this, 10-foot Caribbean reef shark once, and that was like so like amazing because it just shows you like, like these are the most beautiful creatures ever. They want, the guy was, was bigger than this whole living room here, and just touch them the right way and boom, knock them out, and they just like fall asleep and just completely docile and
Really? You can hypnotize a shark?
with a chainmail glove. It's actually not that hard. You have to kind of read the sharks, right? You have to read the environment, and you have to chum the water in a way that you over chum it, they go crazy. You under chum it, they're not interested.
What do you mean chum? I don't know what.
Chum,
No.
basically get the bait ball out, the food, the rotten fish and stuff. That's what you just attract the sharks, and you have pieces of fish in there, and so you can hand feed them. You've got chainmail, obviously the metal on the chainmail, but if you touch their noses, they have what's called ampullae of Lorenzini, these little dimples that they use. That's one of their sensory, they're one of their senses. And if you touch them, that actually, it might be it's like a magnetic thing or whatever, that they kind of fall asleep, and it hypnotizes, and they just conk out. It just like fries their brain, and they
Interesting. It's not just that it is really soothing and they just kind of doze
maybe
off.
they do. Maybe they love it. I don't know. It's maybe like rocking a baby or something, but it's really cute. My goal was always to try it on a great white shark and see how that would work. But
Would you have to go in a cage, or you just went?
you could obviously go in a
that's
cage.
good.
I mean, you could, but I mean, yeah, you possibly could. I don't know. But I remember I did grab a great white shark by the nose once, and just the touching it, it froze it. It completely immobilized it. The guy was on a bait ball, and he was smashing his face against the rudder of the outboard motor in the back of the boat. And so I ran over there and I grabbed the shark and I moved it like from here just all the way, over to here like 5 feet. And the moment I touched its nose, it was thrashing around, and then I touched it and he was just like, okay, stopped and froze. And then I remember moving him, and then all of a sudden he started coming out of it. But so it's not even the metal; it's maybe the magnetic presence in the body. I don't know what it is.
Well, why would they thrash their head around and hit things if their nose are so sensitive?
Because it's food. And sharks are really interesting. See, especially great white sharks, they're very intelligent and they're very calculating. And so they will not, I mean, we talk about shark attacks out here in the waters. And when it happens, everybody's like, oh my God, another shark attack. It's like, what we don't realize is there are so many sharks in that water. And the fact is that if sharks were human attacking machines, there would be people getting eaten every single day. Like every day there would be somebody getting eaten. Or like, look out in the water. There's thousands of people in the water right now.
Yeah.
Thousands, all up and down the coast. And every now and then one person gets hit. Why? It's kind of like the most random thing, where you hear people just like accidentally killing themselves in stupid ways or doing stupid stuff all the time, right? Just completely random. Same thing with sharks, once in a while they make a mistake.
I did read somewhere that if you ever have to get away from a shark, you punch it in the nose. So that's correct? That's not a myth?
No, it's very correct. You touch their nose, they freeze, they freak out. Yeah.
But you have to get pretty close, and you got to have that.
Well,
you have to
obviously
have the understanding of the animal too.
Their nose is right by their mouth, so I'm not saying that if a shark puts its mouth on a seal, whether that seal touches its nose or not, it's probably not going to do much good because that shark is now just gone. It's in its like alpha state, whatever you want to call it. It's in its predatory state where it's gonna, no matter what, it's gonna eat that seal. But if it's just swimming around and goes up, it'll most likely just let release whatever it has if it's thrashing. But you see all these people that have these bite marks, people getting attacked and and you look at that and they're like, oh, the shark bit me. And I'm like, dude, shark didn't bite you. The shark felt you with its mouth. It just went up and it went, If it bites you, you would be missing that whole part of your body. You would have a hole from here all the way around. You would
Yeah.
not be walking today.
Yeah.
You know, you got teeth marks in you, and that's crazy, obviously.
Yeah,
Like,
their
nobody wants.
jaws are super, super strong. Eh?
Their jaws, they go through metal. So I
Yeah.
mean, a human body is just like nothing for them.
Yeah.
It's like a biscuit for us.
Yeah. Oh, I remember where I heard about punching in the nose. I think it was one of these World War II movies where they were trying to teach the pilots like what happens when you get downed in the Pacific, and I think they hired Hawaiian surfers or people, locals. When they're in Pearl Harbor, they had locals come out and teach them how to survive in the water. And so that was one of the things.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, their nose is definitely where you want to touch.
So going back to the coaching that you're doing now, kind of where are you taking taking your business, and where do you want it to help people the most?
Well, the group that I'm working with right now are just new coaches, coaches that really don't have a clear understanding of exactly how to market themselves. So I help them create a product, which is basically a coaching program, a system that helps their ideal customer create a transformation. And then I help them identify who that ideal customer is, and then help them identify, how to market themselves, how to establish a presence, how to create a platform, so that they become an authority in that space. And that's what I'm really psyched about. And so who knows how long I'll be just working strictly with coaches, or if I'm going to expand into other areas. I mean, there's some other things I'm really passionate about as well. So I might start looking at expanding my offerings to, work with, CEOs and getting back to what I originally started doing, and more of the extreme types that really want to create a major shift in their organizations.
Yeah, I think that's a lot more viable as technology and other things open up.
Right.
I'm sure when you're coaching different coaches, you can learn a lot from them too for their specific needs. And
absolutely, I mean, the client always, it's like this difference, as one of our coaching principles is like, there's no master and there's no student, because a great coach is both master and a student.
Yeah.
Master what they do, but also a great student, because I think, that's like Michael Jordan was the greatest probably best basketball player ever, because he was such a student.
Yeah.
He wanted to learn more than anybody. Kobe Bryant, same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Jordan was my favorite. But just like everybody else from the 80s, that grew up in the 80s, he was my favorite.
He was pretty crazy.
He's still going strong for his business. I was pretty surprised that he's able to run a big part of his business, where a lot of athletes, the most they can do afterwards is, be a commentator or something. But running a business is a totally different beast.
It's tough. Yeah, it's tough.
Do you think having grown up in a family that did a lot of business kind of helps you see things in a way that can help these other coaches, or do you think that's what you're offering is more just your life experience? Where do you draw from? Yeah.
I mean,
I guess I'm asking that because my dad grew up in a business family. They weren't, big like yours, but it was just, my grandma was a seamstress. Her brothers owned a sort of like a candy factory kind of a thing, but for Asian candies, treats. And so nobody was educated, but everybody was an entrepreneur type thing. And that's what he ended up doing, and did very well for himself. And a lot of people that I've met just don't see that as a mentality, or, don't see entrepreneurship or similar things as a possibility, or doing things for themselves, or don't know how to think in that manner, because they didn't have those kind of role models. And so they always thought, I'm going to get a job, instead of I'm going to create something for myself. And even if something doesn't work, I can always create something else for myself.
Yeah, that's interesting, because my father was the super corporate type. He's funny, because I think my dad was the least entrepreneurial person ever. Although he did have a really huge appetite for risk. He really had he did some pretty big gambles. He was a bit of a gambling man when he was younger, and he maximized his luck. Like he maximized his opportunities. You know, he knew how to play the game, and
Yeah, that counts too. I mean,
Yeah.
you don't. I'm not saying you have to be an entrepreneur. I just mean like certain skill set or ways of thinking that most people, the common working class people, wouldn't be exposed to. You were exposed to a lot of that.
yeah, you know, I mean, I got to, you know, meet a lot of interesting people, and you know, through my father, you know, we were exposed to a lot of just, you know, interesting situations. But you know, I think in many ways we are taught, you know, both to be like and unlike, you know, our parents. I think,
Yeah.
you know, a lot of things, my dad went the corporate route and I went the completely entrepreneurial route.
Yeah.
You know, I believe doing things on your own is way more, even though I don't have anywhere near the wealth that he amassed. It's like I have things that I think are way more valuable than just financial, monetary, you know, compensation.
Yeah, going back to what we were saying, there's many ways of measuring one's life, and
Yeah.
finance is just one way.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I love just, I mean, you know, I do what I want. Like that freedom is just, it's priceless. I don't, you know, to wake up every day and I could literally just say, you know what, I'm going to go on vacation for 3 months and I'm going to disconnect. I could do it. I could create a way, you know, it involves a little bit of, it would be a little bit, you know, whatever, but it's something I can do.
Yeah.
Whereas most people that are working at a corporation, it's impossible. You know, you can't take 3 months off and the company's going to fire you and then you'll never be able to find a job. You'll be unemployed. So there's too much fear.
Yeah. And I feel like you would go your whole life and each day you're at work, it doesn't seem like a separate experience, kind of like what you have a lot of experiences you can recall on.
Mm-hmm.
Like each day you're in that office or cubicle, whatever, it just all blends into one experience. And so you're pretty limited on the various experiences from life that you can draw from, because 8 hours or 9 hours a day, it kind of all disappears. And I don't know if that makes sense. I'm not explaining it very well. I just mean, like, if you're doing something routine, it just kind of blurs out.
Yeah.
And it doesn't become something that you remember. Like, you're not going to remember each day individually because they were all so similar.
Mm-hmm.
You might remember one or two instances from your 20-year career in a corporate job, but it's not going to stand out and make a difference in your life.
Yeah. No, I think it's definitely true. And there's definitely advantages to working in a big organization. There's a lot of people you meet, interesting people. There's a lot of activity, there's a lot of projects, and there's a lot of cool things happening.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably the thing that I miss the most, not working in a big environment, you know, not having a lot of colleagues that are friends and, you know, having workplace relationships with, you know, having good relationships with people.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing for me, is the lack of connection sometimes.
Yeah. I think we're about an hour over, so we're I want to wrap this up pretty soon, but I want to get your opinion about for people who do want to have more control of their lives or explore this avenue. And I feel like a lot of people there are a lot of people doing side hustles, or whether if it's because of just the economy and not being able to get full benefits like corporate jobs did before, or just a lot of corporations, you know, went under in the financial crisis and people are having to look for other ways of depending on themselves, which is good, which is what we're saying. Like, you want to have personal responsibility, but kind of how would you guide people to start on that path?
Well, I think that's a great question, Jeffrey. One of the things I think that I would recommend, like if I was speaking to my younger self, is actually, you know, if I was to give myself advice, is to, if you're 25 or 30 years old, ask yourself, like, what would the 50-year-old me want me to do right now? You know, and sit down and really understand, what is it that you really want in life? Like, take a moment to think about your values. Do you want freedom? Do you want connection? Do you want to feel like you're making a huge difference? Do you want to be in a community? What is it that you really want in life? Okay? Because just having a job so you can make money, so you can buy a house with a white picket fence, have a couple of family, 2.2 kids, you know, a dog, a Labrador, and then, you know, whatever. That's not that's just a joke. That's somebody else's dream. What is it that you really want as a human being? And then
Yeah,
ask
that's a
yourself,
marketer's dream.
yeah, exactly. That's the commercial, that's exactly, the advertising dream. So what we need to do is we really need to sit down and ask ourselves, what do we really want? Like, how do we want our lives to be? What do we want them to look like? And then make, a 1 year, 5 year, 10-year plan. Say, okay, in 10 years from now, I want to be, what's really important is for me to, have a kid or have a wife or a husband, to be living, someplace that I really enjoy, to be in a certain kind of community, to be, and then understanding, really getting crystal clear with that vision, what's important to you.
All right, love it.
Something's happening. Check your battery pack. It says check your battery.
Well, we're good. We're about done. So perfect timing.
Okay,
All
cool.
right. Thanks for stopping by and hanging out with me today.
Absolutely.
It's been way too long.
It's my pleasure, Jeffrey. Thanks. Anytime, man. You can come back more often.
All right. Well, you got to come back. You got to be here.
I am here. This is my house.
Well, you're leaving on the big road trip.
Oh yeah, I'm always leaving.
All right.
Yeah, I'm gonna be gone, but I'll be back.